There comes a point in life when your silence costs you your peace, when being understanding starts to look a lot like self-betrayal. We tolerate so much in the name of love, loyalty, or keeping the peace that we forget peace was supposed to include us too. Every time you let disrespect slide, every time you excuse manipulation, you teach people how to treat you. The truth is, you can't control how people behave, but you can control what you tolerate. And the moment you draw that line, you stop being their victim and start being your own protector. Because some behaviors, no matter who they come from, are unacceptable. And today, we're going to talk about the 6 you should never tolerate again. You know, one of the most subtle yet dangerous things people do is hide their disrespect behind humor. They'll say something that stings, that undermines your intelligence or your worth, and then laugh it off with, "Relax, I'm just joking." But the truth is, it's not a joke if you're the only one not laughing. Disrespect disguised as humor is one of the most manipulative forms of emotional erosion because it allows cruelty to wear a smile. And if you're not careful, you'll start laughing along just to avoid the discomfort of confrontation. The psychology behind this behavior is simple. It's a form of dominance. It's a test. Someone seeing how much they can say to you without consequence. They wrap it in charm or sarcasm so they can deny responsibility. You're too sensitive, they'll say, shifting the blame from their intention to your reaction. Over time, this pattern trains you to doubt your own feelings, to question whether you're overreacting. A slow conditioning process that makes you tolerate what once would have insulted you. But what makes this particularly insidious is how society normalizes it. We live in a culture that glorifies sarcasm and labels it as intelligence. People who are sharp with their words are admired. Even when those words cut deep, we confuse cruelty with confidence. And we call emotional insensitivity a sign of strength. The reality is, it takes far more intelligence, far more emotional maturity to communicate truth without humiliation, to be direct without being disrespectful. When someone consistently uses humor to undermine you, it's rarely about the joke itself. It's about control. It's about asserting superiority in a way that keeps them safe from accountability. It's their way of saying, I can say whatever I want to you, and you'll still stay. And if you do, even once they learn that your boundaries are flexible, that your self-respect is negotiable, that's how emotional erosion begins. Not with one big moment, but with many small ones you brushed off. You see, boundaries aren't always broken by loud arguments. Sometimes they're broken in laughter at dinner tables, at social gatherings, in the presence of people you love. You smile to keep the peace. You laugh to blend in. But inside, something feels off, a quiet sting that tells you this wasn't harmless. That sting is your intuition. And if you ignore it long enough, it fades into silence. That's how people lose themselves. Not because someone took their power, but because they gave it away in the name of being easygoing. Now, let's talk about why it's so hard to confront this. Most of us were raised to value politeness over honesty. We were taught not to make things awkward, not to be too emotional. So when someone crosses the line with humor, we internalize it. We try to rationalize their behavior instead of recognizing the disrespect. We tell ourselves they didn't mean it that way, that maybe we're being dramatic. But what you tolerate consistently becomes your identity silently. If you keep laughing at jokes that hurt you, you're teaching others and yourself that your comfort doesn't matter. Here's something I've learned through both business and personal experience. Confident people don't need to humiliate others to feel significant. When you meet someone who uses sarcasm to belittle others, what you're really seeing is insecurity dressed up as wit. True strength is measured by restraint, by the ability to hold power and still choose grace. When someone truly respects you, they're aware of how their words land. They think before they speak. They may tease, but never at the expense of your dignity. So the next time someone says something cutting and follows it with, "It's just a joke," I want you to pause, not to explain, not to justify, but to observe. Observe how it feels in your body. Observe whether their laughter feels like warmth or a warning, and then make a decision, not from your emotions, but from your self-worth. You owe it to yourself to correct the first instance of disrespect before it becomes a habit someone feels entitled to. It's not about confrontation. It's about calibration. You're calibrating how people engage with you. You're signaling that while you appreciate humor, you won't tolerate humiliation. You're teaching others and reminding yourself that kindness doesn't require silence, and confidence doesn't require cruelty. Because when you allow people to mock you under the pretense of playfulness, you're not being easygoing, you're being edited. And the more you allow it, the smaller your authentic self becomes in the room. There's nothing in the room. There's nothing noble about tolerating subtle disrespect. So the next time someone hides an insult inside a smile, remember this: not every joke deserves your laughter, and not every comment deserves your presence. Your piece is not a punchline. And the moment you stop laughing at your own disrespect, the world learns how to start taking you seriously. Closing thought: sometimes the most powerful thing you can say isn't, "That's not funny." It's simply not laughing. There's a kind of control that doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't demand or threaten. It whispers softly, convincingly, in the language of love. It sounds like, "I just worry about you," or "I only want what's best." It sounds caring, protective, even noble. But underneath that tone of concern, something much darker is taking shape: manipulation. Emotional manipulation doesn't start with control. It starts with care. And that's what makes it so difficult to recognize and even harder to walk away from. We've all seen it. Relationships, friendships, even families where love is conditional, where affection comes with invisible strings. The manipulator doesn't ask you to obey. They make you want to. They craft a version of love where your freedom feels like disloyalty and your independence feels like rejection. It's subtle, almost elegant, but make no mistake, it's control disguised as devotion. Psychologically, manipulation thrives on confusion. The manipulator blurs the line between love and obligation. They condition you to associate their approval with your worth. One day, you're celebrated for being yourself. The next, you're criticized for the very same thing. It keeps you guessing, keeps you chasing validation that never stays long enough to feel secure. This emotional push and pull isn't random. It's strategic. How manipulators build dependency. You start seeking peace through compliance, mistaking submission for stability. What's remarkable and tragic is that many emotionally intelligent people fall for this form of control because empathy can become a weakness when you use it against yourself. You understand where they're coming from. You justify their moods, their jealousy, their need to know everything about your life. You say things like, "They're just protective," or "They mean well." But here's the truth: intent does not erase impact. And love that restricts your growth is not love, it's ownership. In professional environments, this same pattern appears through what's called emotional gatekeeping. A manipulative colleague or leader may say, "You're part of the team," but isolate you when you disagree. They praise you publicly, but withdraw opportunities when you stop being agreeable. In both love and leadership, manipulation uses approval as currency. You're rewarded for compliance and penalized for individuality. Philosophically, genuine love and control cannot coexist. Love liberates, control confines. Love says, "I trust you to make your own choices." Control says, "I know what's best for you," or had. And the irony is that Manipulators often believe they're acting out of care, but true care doesn't cage someone's spirit. It empowers them to stand on their own, even if that means standing apart. What's important to understand is that manipulation doesn't always come from malicious intent. Sometimes it's learned behavior, a survival mechanism people develop to secure attention or avoid abandonment. But recognizing that doesn't mean you should excuse it. Compassion without boundaries becomes self-destruction. You can understand someone's pain without letting them project it onto you. One of the most freeing realizations you can have is that you don't owe anyone access to your emotional energy simply because they claim to love you. You can care deeply about someone and still protect your peace. You can empathize without absorbing their instability. That's emotional maturity. The ability to hold space for others without losing your sense of self. There's a distinct strength in stepping back from manipulation because it requires clarity, not anger. You're not walking away to punish anyone. You're walking away to preserve your sanity. You're choosing truth over guilt, clarity over chaos. You're choosing to believe that peace is not something someone else gives you. It's something you reclaim when you stop letting others dictate how you feel. And when you finally recognize manipulation for what it is, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop explaining why you need space. You stop apologizing for saying no. You start to understand that love should never feel like surveillance and affection should never be measured by compliance. Let me tell you something. The people who genuinely love you will never require you to shrink to keep them comfortable. They'll never use your emotions as leverage. They won't make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. Their love will challenge you to grow, but it will never punish you for evolving. So the next time someone tries to guilt you into submission with the phrase, "I'm only doing this because I care," pause and ask yourself, if this were truly love, would it make me feel smaller or would it make me feel stronger? Because love in its purest form isn't about possession. It's about partnership. It's about two people choosing to grow side by side, not one person dictating how the other should live. And if you ever find yourself in a relationship, romantic, familial, or professional, where you have to sacrifice your peace to keep someone else happy, remind yourself of this simple truth. Love doesn't demand the dimming of your light to make someone else shine. Closing thought. You don't prove love by losing yourself. You prove strength by choosing yourself. Even when guilt tries to convince you otherwise, boundaries are one of the purest forms of self-respect. They are not about building walls. They are about defining your worth. They quietly communicate who you are, what you value, and what you will not tolerate. But here's the truth most people avoid. The moment you start enforcing boundaries, you will lose people who were only comfortable with your silence. You see, boundaries test relationships. They expose who truly values you and who merely benefits from you. The people who love your generosity but not your limits will always interpret your boundaries as an act of rebellion. They'll call you selfish, distant, difficult. But what they really mean is that they can no longer take advantage of the version of you that didn't say no. Psychologically, consistent disregard for boundaries is never accidental. It's a choice. People remember what matters to them. They don't forget. Your boundaries, they test your reactions to them. The first time, curiosity. The second time, it's entitlement. The third time, it's manipulation. And if you continue to let it slide, it becomes permission. Because what you allow once, you invite again. And yet, so many people struggle to enforce boundaries because they confuse kindness with compliance. They fear being misunderstood or seen as rude, especially empathetic people. They overextend, overexplain, and overaccommodate. They believe that saying no will cost them love, respect, or connection. But the reality is that the absence of boundaries doesn't create closeness. It creates resentment. When you constantly say yes to others at the expense of yourself, you begin to feel unseen, undervalued, and exhausted. That's not connection. That's emotional debt. Boundaries are the architecture of healthy relationships. They are the invisible lines that make respect visible. Think of them as the framework that allows love to breathe, because love without boundaries is chaos. It becomes one person's comfort built on another person's exhaustion. It's not sustainable. Philosophically, boundaries are not about control. They are about balance. They don't demand distance. They define dignity. They're not designed to push people away. They protect the energy that allows you to stay compassionate without being consumed. They help you love from a place of wholeness rather than depletion. And here's something powerful to understand: the people who truly belong in your life will never be threatened by your boundaries. They will respect them because they operate from a place of emotional security, not control. People who have done their inner work understand that respect is not negotiable. It's reciprocal. But those who thrive on your availability, your constant, your endless flexibility, they will resist. They'll label your boundaries as attitude. They'll accuse you of changing. And in a way, they're right. You are changing. You're evolving from people pleasing to self-respecting. You're no longer trading your peace for approval. And that's one of the most powerful transformations a person can experience. What's important to remember is that boundaries are not ultimatums. They're not threats. They're statements of self-awareness. When you say, "This doesn't work for me," you're not being difficult. You're being deliberate. You're teaching others how to engage with you respectfully. And that's a mark of emotional intelligence, not arrogance. In both personal and professional spaces, boundaries separate leaders from followers, creators from consumers, and visionaries from opportunists. People who know their limits are far more productive, grounded, and respected than those who constantly stretch themselves thin for validation. Because when you have no boundaries, you become a mirror of everyone else's needs, reflecting everything but standing for nothing. There's a quiet power in saying, "No, not this time." It doesn't need to be loud or dramatic. It doesn't require explanation. It's an act of alignment, a signal to the universe that you're done living reactively and ready to live intentionally. When you honor your boundaries, you tell life itself that you're ready for relationships that are rooted in mutual respect, not convenience. The truth is, boundaries will cost you certain connections, but they'll also introduce you to a deeper level of peace. You'll start attracting people who don't drain you to understand you. You'll find conversations that don't require defending your worth. You'll begin to realize that solitude with integrity is far more fulfilling than connection built on compromise. And yes, it takes courage, because setting boundaries means confronting your own fear of rejection. It means being okay with being misunderstood. But freedom has never come without a price. And in this case, that price is letting go of the need to be liked by everyone. Boundaries aren't about isolation. They're about elevation. You're not shutting people out. You're choosing the frequency at which you allow them in. You're curating the emotional environment that allows you to grow, lead, and love with authenticity. So the next time someone crosses your line and says, "You've changed," smile and agree. Because you have. You've changed from seeking peace through pleasing others to finding peace within yourself. And that's growth. The kind that doesn't require validation, only conviction. Closing thought. The moment you stop apologizing for your boundaries, you start attracting people who no longer need to test them.